Good day everyone. So in this little drawing tutorial, we're going to go over the sectioning of a bearing. We're going to go over the sectioning of a bearing in both the conventional representation as well as a detailed representation. So there's obviously two ways of drawing them. The conventional representation is quite quick and quite easy. The detailed representation requires us to actually do some hatching and requires a bit of a knowledge about bearing terminology, and that'll help you complete the drawing. But something you must know, please, is that you must refer to your South African Standard of Engineering General Drawing Principles. And if you have a look at, I think we just found the page here. I think I've dog-eared it. Page 33 in this booklet. It will show you the detailed representation as well as the conventional representation. So please go ahead and get yourselves this document. If you haven't already, your educator or teacher have a copy of this, or should be able to get a copy of this for you and upload it on your digital learning platform. All right, so without further ado, let's keep going. I think it's very important to have a bearing terminology before you start drawing this. So I've included this little terminology on this drawing sheet here. And an actual real bearing, which I think is quite cool, so that we can see what's what. So if we start from the outside, this portion of the bearing we call a race. So this little flat face over here, we call a race, right? This little flat portion on the inside, this inner sort of diameter here, with the through hole, where the shaft would sit, this portion here is called the inner race. Right, so between your two races, you will have your rolling element. In this case, we have a ball bearing, so we have a roller ball, if you like. So that's your rolling element. It's inside there. You can't really see them because they are hidden behind what we call the cage. So this sheet of material here that has been sort of bent over the ball and then pinned over here is called the cage. So that cage holds and pin. The cage and the pin holds these balls inside the bearing or the rolling elements at about a 45-degree pitch between one another. So yeah, that's essential, the terminology. So inner race, cage, rolling element inside the cage, as well as your outer race. So I'll be referring to that terminology as I construct the, especially the detailed representation. So without further ado, let's get onto that, the detailed representation. So I have here a bearing with all the dimensions that we need, as well as the front view over here. Okay, so we'll call that top view and front view because we're working on third angle orthographics. So the first thing I'm going to go do is, just because this is a scale 1:1, I'm just going to bring these heights across. Okay. I'll do it across the whole page, nice construction lines, height across. And then I'm going to focus in on the bearing in the middle of the page. And we're going to do a detailed representation. Right. So what I want to do here for the detailed representation is I literally want to carry down every single hard edge that you see, right? The PCD, as well as the diameter, the outer edges of the rolling element. So I'm going to, without further ado, let me carry on with that. So I'm going to take that edge down, right? I'm going to take that part of the outer race down. I'm going to take the center marking down. Center marking comes down. I'm just doing this in construction for the moment. If you like, the outer side of the inner race down, and then the inner side of the inner race. I'm going to go across. That's the inside of the inner race, the outside of the inner race. Center marking or center line position, right? The inside of the outer race and the outside of the outer race, the right hand side. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to carry this center marking over here to get good positioning for my rolling element in the detailed view. Carry it across. I don't need it for the conventional view, but I do need it for this view. Right, so what we're going to do here now is in effect, what we have here is a little crosshair. Let me do it slightly darker for you guys to see what I mean. So with the construction lines for the center, you'll see that we've got essentially a crosshair, and with the center being that position over there. So the diameter of the rolling element, in this case of the ball, is 12. So the radius being 6. Now you can either use your compass to scribe that rolling element, but the most important thing you need to know now is that the rolling element is going to supersede everything else. It's almost going to act like the shaft here. It's not going to be hatched like a shaft or a pin or a key. It's going to supersede all the material around it, the cage and the races, right? And so we're going to go and draw it immediately, and I'm actually going to go draw it straight away in a finished detail. And it'll just save me a bit of time for later. Right, so I'm going to take my 12 diameter. I've got this nice little circular ruler with different circle options with different diameters. So I'm going to go set that up nice and straight. So there's my 14, 13, my 12 diameter. And I'm going to go and draw in that rolling element on that position. I'm going to go across to the other side and make sure I position the crosshair perfectly again. And I'm going to go and draw that roller element into on the right. Okay, so I've positioned perfectly both rolling elements, both balls, and now I'm going to go and draw in darker outline the races on both left and right. So we'll start with the outer race on the left over here. So there's the outside edge of the outer race. Now the inside edge of the outer race stops at the rolling element and continues below the rolling element. And we're going to do the same thing for the inner race. We're just getting the widths of both races in here. And remember, we do not go through that rolling element. And there's the inside of the inner race. So we're going to go inner race, inside line, inner race, outside line. Do not cut through the rolling element. Inner edge of the outer race. And the outside of the outside race on the right. There I'm going to now go and draw a hard edge across the top. It doesn't just stop there, we continue because we want to, we see this part over here as a line. We haven't spoken about cutting planes, but for the sake of this, I do apologize. This would be our cutting plane here with the reference of AA as such. A little bit of cart before the horse, but anyway. Right, and then I continue with a nice dark finished detail along the bottom, a nice dark outline. Right, so we've now essentially finished the drawing of the detailed representation, but now we need to go and hatch. Now, the only thing you're going to hatch here is the inner and outer race. I'm just going to take my flash off because it's creating a bit of disturbance. Right, so here we go. We're going to do hatching of the outer race. Hatching of the inner race, and now you'll notice that my hatching stops the circumference of the sphere. This manages to miss it. Oopsie, I've gone without thinking. I've gone into the cage at the back here, the space around the back, which is incorrect. Right, so we come across and we do the same thing on this side. Ensuring that our hatching does not enter into or come into beyond the circumference of that rolling element. And there we have it. We have a bearing in detail. Now what I'm going to do now is just go get some center markings in there. Remember, any kind of sphere like this or a circle needs a center marking. One long, one short. Go across to the right and produce the same. Right, Complete. So now we're going to go across to draw the bearing in convention, and this is so much easier. So I'm going to take the outer edge of the outer race, the inner edge of the inside race, the inner edge of the inside race, and the outer edge of the outside race on the right. And we're pretty much good here. The only thing I need to do for the conventional representation is create a 245-degree diagonals, as almost if we're showing a flat end on a shaft. Very similar convention, pretty much actually the same. Right. We go 45 across that and diagonals. Good. And then finishing off with some nice dark outlines. Right, so there you have it. One bearing in convention and one bearing in detail. So remember, the rolling element supersedes everything else. You see it in front of everything else. It's a bit like a pin or a key or a shaft. You do not hatch it. What you hatch is the race on the outside or the inside. All right, I hope this little video tutorial has helped you identify the correct way in which to draw bearings.